Hello beautiful creative friends, it's Belinda and today I'm here to share another process video from the archives with you. I am working with a cut file from Cut to You. I believe it's called the Valentine Rose cut file, and the Cocoa Vanilla These Days collection, which is a couple of years old now, and that just goes to show you how long ago it was that I created this layout. For this layout, I am adding quite a bit of layered mixed media in the background, and I'm starting off with some Lindy's Magicals in like a buttery yellow color, and I've just got this really wide brush, and my aim was to just swipe a soft layer of color onto the background. I didn't add gesso to this background, which you can see by the way that the water is soaking into the pattern paper. But that's dried now. It is a little darker than what I had wanted it to be, but overall I'm pretty happy with it. So the next layer of mixed media that I'm adding is using this scripted stamp. I'm not sure where I got this from. It's just one that I've had in my stash. And I've got an ink from Catherine Pooler. I'm not putting it on a block because I want it to be really quite textural. So I'm just roughly placing some of that down and then flapping my hand as though that's going to dry the ink any faster. So that's layer number 2, and then I'm going to come in with layer number 3 now, which is some modeling paste. I have this stencil from Uniquely Creative. It's a really sweet little pattern. It's just sort of 3 dots, or a pattern of 3 dots together, and I'm going to add that. You can see that I have sort of created 3 little clusters of this layered mixed media, and that's just keeping in line with that rule of 3 design guide. So that's all the mixed media dried there now. I can start to figure out how I want this layout to come together. Oh, you can also see that I have trimmed down my background, matted it onto some pattern paper, and then added a line of stitching behind it. So I do want to add quite a few layers of pattern paper behind the photo, and I want it to be a little bit hodgepodge, higgledy-piggledy. So I'm not aiming for straight with this. I want this layout to feel quite soft and textural, and the way that I'm achieving that is by not having, you know, some really hard straight lines in it. With those 2 floral cut files, you can see that I have already backed them. I've used 2 different pattern papers for the actual rose portion, and then I've used a soft green pattern paper for the foliage and a wood grain for the stem. Now in the end I do trim those down, which you will see me do on camera shortly. And I really love using cut files that way, so it's about making them work for you. I backed them because my original plan was to have 1 flower on each side of my photo, but that didn't really work out once I started playing with it. So I do cut that down and go with something a little bit different. But just adding 1 more layer of texture and softness behind the photo. I've grabbed out one of my pieces of tissue paper. I have a huge stash of tissue paper. Every time I get something that comes in it, I scrunch it up really nice to add lots of texture and lots of to add lots of texture to it. And then I pop it into a box that I have just sitting next to my desk. And then it is perfect to use to add behind photos. So as I said, I had planned on sticking that, having 1 flower on each side of the photo, but it doesn't work. They're too big. I cut them too big. So then I thought, okay, well, what if I sort of tuck the stem behind so that you can't see them? But again, it's taking up a little bit too much room on the page. So I'm playing around with it a little bit, trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. I know that I definitely want to include both of these. I think when I cut them out, I also flipped the design on one of them, so they're not exactly the same. One is a mirror image of the other. So I decide that rather than trying to have 1 flower up the top of the photo and 1 to the bottom, I'm going to cut them out, and I'm actually going to put both of the florals at the bottom left hand side of the photo. And the reason that works, it does make that left hand side quite heavy, quite feature heavy, but this page is actually going to sit alongside a pocket page, which if you hang around right to the end of this video, you will see a photo of the companion pocket page that I created to go with this layout. I had some more photos from this occasion. I had a little bit of story that I wanted to tell, and I'm trying to work a little bit smarter with my scrapbooking and also think about space saving. So I am trying to include pocket pages a lot more in my general scrapbooking as a good way of getting some extra photos and some extra stories documented. So as I said, there's a photo of that right at the end of this video if you stick around, and I cannot believe that this whole time I have been chattering away, I still haven't figured out where to put those flowers, but there we are, we got there now. Sometimes the creative process works really easily and things just come together well. Sometimes it's a bit of hard work, as we've just seen there. So I'm pretty settled now on having those two florals on the bottom left of the photo, but I still need to add some balance. So I'm planning at the moment on having a cluster of embellishments to the top right of my photo, and I am also thinking about adding a small cluster of embellishments up to the top right of the page, and that's the plan, and that's what I'm kind of going with. That's what you're going to see me fussing around with now in this very, very lengthy embellishing process. As I said, sometimes the creative process, it just flows. This layout was definitely one where it was a little bit trickier. It was a little bit more challenging. There was a lot more fussing around and messing around. So I have sped the video up quite a little bit, just to try and make that go a bit quicker. And now I'm playing around with trying to get the backing off that tape, because I do have some mixed media in the background. I'm also adding just a little bit of wet adhesive, not a lot. The tape should hold because most of it is just that Lindy's, which is quite flat, but there is a little bit of texture there. So I'm just adding some wet adhesive to make sure that everything sticks down nicely. Now that I've got that in place, I can come and adhere that second floral down. I'm just using some wet glue. At the moment, I don't have any dimensional adhesive behind those florals, but I do want to add a little bit of oomph to them. So I'm just grabbing, this is when I've used up all the circle pieces from this foam piece, I've just kept the backing, and then I can cut that down into chunks, and it's perfect for something like this where I need to lift up something a little bit bigger off the back of the page. So I'm just adding a couple of pieces of foam there just to help the florals and the foliage stand out and to give a little bit more dimension to the page. So the florals are good now. I'm going to work on these embellishment clusters. Like I said, I'm having this one here to the top right. I've grabbed a few pieces out from the ephemera pack, and I've also fussy cut some of those little houses from, I think they came from a patterned paper in the 6x8 paper pad, or the A5 paper pad, I think it is now. Off camera, I pulled my sewing machine over and I added a row of stitching around that phrase piece that says time spent together is better, and that actually serves as the title for this page. I didn't add any other titles, and I had that piece on there, so I thought, why not just use it? There is no rule in scrapbooking that says that you have to have a big title. In fact, there's no rule that says that you have to have a title at all. So why not? It was the whole idea of this spread. It was just a really simple event, an everyday thing. I picked my daughter up from school one day and we stopped in at a coffee place that's just very, very close by to where we live. It's a beautiful place in the Swan Valley. They roast their own coffee. They make lovely coffees. They make great hot chocolates for the kids. And it is an absolutely beautiful setting. It looks out over a lake and looks out over the vineyards in the Swan Valley. So on this particular day, we stopped in, we grabbed our hot chocolates, and I was just feeling really grateful for where we live, and also feeling really grateful for being able to spend time with my kids like this, because I know that not everybody has that time available. So that's what I wanted to document, and that's what this is about. And as I said, the story is going to be on the pocket page, which is a companion to this. There's no journaling going on to this page itself. So while I've been chatting away, I've gone through and I've pulled out a few extra bits and pieces from the ephemera pack and also from the floral ephemera pack. I love that Coco Vanilla's collections come with their own pack of floral ephemera now. I love to include florals on my layouts, so having a whole packet dedicated just to florals, it just really, really speaks to me. I also, as I mentioned earlier, had thought that I would create just a little cluster to the very top right of the page. And so I continue on in that vein right up to the end of this process. I've trimmed down a couple of strips of pattern paper. I was thinking that I would kind of try to replicate what I have built for that cluster to the top right of my photo, where I've got strips of paper layered one on top of the other, and then I have a couple of little ephemera pieces stuck in there. So I'm now ready to adhere down this piece here where I've built this little cluster with some paper strips. I've added some foam tape behind it, and that's just to give it a little bit of lift off the photo and to help add even more dimension to the page. So I'm going to stick a couple more of these little houses in, just tucking them in, and then I've got some florals. So those little foliage pieces that you see there, the white with the green, that's what I had trimmed off the stems of the cut files that I had already backed. I just grabbed my scissors and I rounded off some of the edges where it looked a bit funny from where I had cut it apart from the main cut file, and then I'm just going to use those as little extra pieces to tuck in. It helps to tie the two sides, the two embellishment clusters together. There's a little bit of continuity there. And it also just adds a really sweet and subtle little layering element to sit behind that embellishment cluster. Again, using my foam adhesive on the outside of those leaves, which just helps to give them a little bit of movement. And then I've just got a few more little bits and pieces that I'm going to tuck in. I'm using different pieces, different types of foam adhesive. I've got quite a few different types that I use in my stash. Some are smaller, some are bigger, some are thicker, some are thinner. And I like to vary it a little bit just to give a little bit of difference to the layers. So I don't like to have everything sitting at the same level, and having a variety of foam adhesives on hand just helps me to add that varying dimension. So just like with my cut files, I am not afraid of trimming down my ephemera pieces. I've got enough that I probably don't have to do this. I probably could use the whole piece and tuck half of it underneath so that it's hidden, but this is just something that I've gotten into the habit of doing, and I will continue doing it. The other thing that it helps me do, aside from being a little bit frugal, is that when I am working on a layout where I'm building multiple clusters, if I trim something down, it means that I can use half of each in each cluster, which again lends itself to creating a bit of cohesiveness and continuity there across the layout. There's that foam adhesive again. You can see that I have built that little layer, the little cluster up to the top right, and in a moment I'm going to go off screen and I'm going to add some stitching around it, and then I'm going to play around with the placement and decide that no, I'm not adding it there at all. So I'm going to wrap it up here while you watch me fussing around with this, and again just to show you that the creative process is sometimes a little bit clunky and a little bit messy. I do hope that you've enjoyed this video. It is a little bit longer. If you have, I'd love for you to go ahead and leave me a comment or give me a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and join me on my paper crafting adventures. I will leave you now with these close-up photos and say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.